This is TechVibe Radio, your front row seat to Pittsburgh's technology and innovation ecosystem. TechVibe is brought to you by Compunetics at Compunetics.com, Chorus Call at ChorusCall.com, Highmark at Highmark.com, Huntington Bank at Huntington.com, Kindling at TheKindlingAgency.com, PNC Bank at PNC.com, and Savier at Savier.com. Here are your hosts, Audrey Russo and Jonathan Kirsting of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, coming at you from the Huntington Bank Studios. Good morning. So happy you're joining me here for TechVibe Radio. This is your front row seat to Pittsburgh's technology and innovation ecosystem. And I am Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I get to have so much fun talking to the absolute coolest people in Pittsburgh's tech scene and putting them right here on KDKA. And today we have a guest talking about with a company that has been so fun to watch just really grow by leaps and bounds over the past few years, a company called Techstra Solutions. And if you don't know Techstra Solutions, they provide technology and talent solutions to large organizations that are undergoing digital transformation at its absolute finest. Their client-focused services include things like strategy and innovation in the cloud, lots of data, lots of digital, and all sorts of automation. And today we are talking to Mitch Kwiatkowski, who's the Executive Vice President of Data. So you're the data at Techstra there, Mitch. Really glad to have you here today. Your background is amazing. You've done some really cool projects over the years with big results. We're talking like $250 million worth of results. That's a chunk of change right there.
Yeah.
And to have you stop by here, talk about what you're doing with Techstra and really talk about digital transformation and what's going on, especially with data. It's fun stuff.
It is. No, I appreciate being here. And I'm always excited to talk about data.
Yeah. All right. I like talking data too. So I think we kind of could match made in heaven. Today, I'm very excited. I want our listeners to kind of hang out to the end because I'm starting a new series today. It's our TechVibe signature questions, which I'm very excited about. You know, I get to talk to literally, I think, some of the smartest people in the world that have done really cool stuff around business and technology. I want to get takeaways from them that we can all kind of use to guide our business, even our lives a little bit. If you hang out to the end, you get to hear from Mitch. And Mitch, you're my first one to do this. So I appreciate you humoring me with my experiment here.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome, dude. So first off, it's your background real fast. You've worked for some pretty cool companies. And you're working with Techstra, which like I said, one of my favorite companies here at the Tech Council. Just love what Jennifer and Larry are doing, the Honigs, and amazing company. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been in data, technology, analytic roles for about the last 25 years, almost all of that in healthcare. And, I've known Larry and Jennifer for probably about maybe getting close to 8 or 10 years now.
Excellent.
As being a customer in the past.
Gotcha.
And I always had a lot of great respect for the work that they've done. And I think as I've held a number of roles, leadership roles in different companies, the most recent prior to Techstra was as a chief data and analytic officer. And I think this was an opportunity in my career to start to get down a path of maybe consulting where there's a little more variety in things.
Totally.
There's an opportunity to push boundaries and have maybe a more expansive influence and impact and again in healthcare. And I love healthcare. I've worked in with other industries as well. But when I think Techstra was, I think what they've done, where they're going, I think the approach that they take, I love the fact that, let's meet companies where they are. Let's co-create, let's be hands-on. And I've always been hands-on even as a leader. So those are things that I enjoy, and it was a great opportunity to join their team.
I knew they were excited to have you. When they were mentioning it to me, I was like, we got to get this guy on the show and talk about what he's up to, because this is like fantastic stuff, without a doubt. I mean, first off, the idea that you have led data and AI initiatives that have delivered over $250 million in measurable value, especially in a day and age when people are wondering, what value am I really getting from my AI investments? There's been some reports out there where like how many projects just fail. But you know how to make this stuff work, which I think is so cool. And the fact that you can do this across all types of industries with Techstra, I think is really exciting. Like, how do you make that work? What's the secret?
It's not something that I always knew how to do. If I go back early in my healthcare career, I spent a number of years implementing electronic health records here in the Pittsburgh area for primary care physicians. And I learned very quickly that it wasn't about technology. And you really have to understand what the business is looking for, what's driving them, what are they trying to get out of technology. In the healthcare space, it's about patients, right? It's about healthcare, it's about communities. So the work that we do in the data space, the AI space, whatever it may be, it always has to be about what value are we giving back? What difference is it making to patients? And
I love the way you said that. It's not necessarily the technology, but it's really getting behind the business problem that's at hand. Because you can throw technology at the wall all over the place, and it's cool technology. But if you're just hitting a wall with it, then what's the point?
Right. And there's so many different solutions out there for different things, different tech, and it's really, and again, going, with Techstra, that's a lot of it is the approach to how do you make change? How do you create this transformation regardless of the technology, and pulling the other levers that make that successful?
And especially with how fast technology changes as well too.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone's talking about AI now, but I mean, AI has been in the making since the early 80s and even before that. It's in the past 2 years, things have gotten hot. But more technologies are going to come, and AI is going to continue to change. So at the end of the day, I think your philosophy is right. You look at the problem, you solve, look at the toolkit that's in front of you now in order to solve those problems. So that's a good way to do business, I think.
Yeah.
And tell me about some of the clients that Techstra works with. You work with some of the biggest companies in the world.
These are in the healthcare sector, finance, energy, some of the largest companies in those industries. Transformations are tough. And at any company, regardless of the size and regardless of revenue, there are always challenges that are there. And a lot of what we do is we help go in, and if something's stalling, if it's hit barriers, if there's just challenges with that transformation, where we really excel. And I love doing this is how do you help get over those, those obstacles? How do you remove them? And how do you help with those changes and get that transformation done? And we like to move at a pretty good pace. And in some companies, we've even been told to slow down a little bit. But, again, we understand what, and it's not disruption for the sake of disruption. It's we try to make sure that everyone understands what we're doing and why.
How do you balance that speed of innovation? Because I mean, that is the thing where it's obviously you got to move fast, but at the same time, you got to make sure things are safe and locked down. There's that balance. How do you keep yourself? Because I know it's going to be very exciting when you're able to deploy these solutions, you see some results and you're seeing things happen. So it's kind of like keep pushing on that accelerator.
AI is one of those big ones. And I've heard probably the biggest, I do a lot in the data and AI governance space, right? And that's got probably a bad reputation in a lot of organizations. It's a fair one in some cases. But I think with AI, a lot of what I've heard is we have to move fast. We have to innovate because we've got to be competitive. If we don't do it, someone else will. And the reality is you have to be aware of what you're doing. If you look at a lot of the AI projects, like you said, a lot of them are either failing or they're not delivering the results that people thought. And in some cases, they're finding that, maybe there are adverse impacts. Patients are getting harmed. There's bias. There's all sorts of things that maybe weren't intended. You have to be aware of those things. And I think you can do that in a relatively speedy way and make sure that you have to be agile and flexible. And that lets you still innovate and do the right things with the cool new technologies.
I love it. I'm having so much fun talking to you. In case you just joined us, we are talking to Mitch Kwiatkowski from Techstra Solutions. If you go to, I believe, at techstrasolutions.com, you can check them out. Go to pghtech.org and check us out. Now, we love helping tech companies succeed. And if you stick around for the second half, we've got more about, of course, what Mitch has done over the years around AI and data transformation, what he's doing with Techstra Solutions. Plus, we're getting to my TechVibe signature questions today, Mitch. I'm very excited about this. So it's coming at you real quick. We're taking a break. We'll be right back. The Pittsburgh Technology Council has been helping our region's tech companies succeed since 1983. The Pittsburgh Technology Council helps its members meet new customers, hire top talent, make headlines, and have a strong voice in government. From startup to multinational, the PTC helps tech companies and advanced manufacturers of all sizes. See how we can help your venture grow at pghtech.org. That's pghtech.org. A strong work culture is the invisible force that binds employees to each other, to the company, and to their work. It's linked to better business outcomes, happier employees, and increased retention. How we work and where we work continue to evolve in almost every way, yet our human need for connection and purpose remains. Help your employees connect and thrive by evolving your culture to support your team, regardless of how or where they work. So discover how the Kindling Culture Agency can transform your company's culture at sparksomething.big.com. That's the Kindling Culture Agency at sparksomething.big.com. CompuNetics.com. CompuNetics is the leading developer of unified voice, video, and data collaboration and conferencing applications for the service provider, government, and unique workflow applications. The Summit Olympus and Evergreen platforms, driven by their encrypted user interfaces, enable powerful and secure collaboration. Combined with world-class support and innovative professional services, CompuNetics delivers the right solution every time. Learn more at CompuNetics.com. Your dial is set to TechVibe Radio, brought to you by CompuNetics, Chorus Call, Highmark, Huntington Bank, Kindling, PNC Bank, and Xavier. Here are your hosts, Audrey Russo and Jonathan Kirsting of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, coming at you from the Huntington Bank studios.
So glad you're hanging out with me this Sunday morning. I'm giving you that front row seat to Pittsburgh's technology ecosystem, and I am Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I always say I get to have the best conversations with the coolest people in Pittsburgh. And Mitch, you're living up to it so far. I'm loving it, man. You're passing the test.
I'm glad. Thank you.
In case you just joined us, we are talking to Mitch Kwiatkowski of Techstra Solutions. Go to TechstraSolutions.com. When it comes to digital transformation, they're making it happen for really big companies, solving really tough problems. And Mitch, when did you join up with Techstra again? How long have you been there for?
It was earlier this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there about 6 months now.
Yeah, and you've got decades of experience with large healthcare organizations, helping them solve really tough problems with their data and analytics. And I mean, you're talking about managing health records. Can't think of more sensitive, important stuff than that, where it requires a special care. It does. I said when the folks from Techstra mentioned to me that you were joining the company to do some consulting, I was like, that's cool. Let's get them on the show. And so here you are. So glad to have you here, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we're seeing so much hype around AI right now, right? I mean, I sometimes I can't even talk about it because it's just so prevalent, but we can't ignore it. And obviously it's just so important to what's going on. What is your approach? The first thing you can tell anyone who's just thinking about, because we had mentioned before, like so many companies, when they go through projects, I forgot the study, but they said it was like 90% of projects just don't return the on investment the way they thought. I can't remember the exact study, but it's a staggering amount. Now, you've had the inverse of that, thank God, over your career, which is really cool. And I think you mentioned earlier before that I really liked is the fact that it's not just the technology, but it's looking at the business approach. Can we continue on that thread about what it means to have a really successful implementation of AI? Because I know for a lot of times I've seen so many folks who are like, they want to do AI just to say they're doing something with AI. And that doesn't seem like the right approach.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a business challenge or business problem or question, right?
Okay.
I think there, everybody, if you go back to ChatGPT coming out, a few years ago, everybody jumped on it. And in healthcare might have been a little bit slower because, as you mentioned, there's that sensitivity around the data and regulation and so on. But, it's everyone recognized the impact that AI could have in healthcare and still will have in healthcare. So I think the approach that I've taken with companies is a little bit twofold. One, we've got to have those business problems that we want to solve. We want to make sure that there's something that we're going to get out of whatever the investment, time, money, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I always like that sliver of innovation. Most of the companies that I've worked with are very innovative, and they like to push the envelope in some fashion. So we would always have almost our little skunk works or fail fast group trying to test out new things in ways that weren't going to necessarily go out into production and harm anyone, or people may not see it. If it worked, great. If it didn't, not a big deal. Let's move on. But these were really quick things. So I don't think, a lot of companies are risk averse. You have a lot of the regulatory compliance factors in there. If anything, I've seen probably the privacy regulatory groups maybe be a little too stringent or more stringent on it. And I think that butts heads with your research institutes and your innovation labs that really want to push that. So I think there's absolutely a happy median. And that's where, I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years around AI governance. And the goal isn't to necessarily govern and control, which is how a lot of people view it, but it's how do we make sure that it's responsible? How do we make sure that we know what data is getting used? How's it getting used? Who's it getting used by? Who's using it? And again, make sure that we're doing things for the right reason.
Yeah.
And all of that has to go back to whatever that business use case was, whatever the business drivers are. It has to be actionable outcomes, and there has to be value attached to that.
I like that approach a lot because I feel like, once again, you're solving something with a business challenge. And as you're doing this, you're also able to kind of look back at each step to see where something slipped. You could then pinpoint it and then correct it without being too concerned you're going to blow the whole thing up, for lack of a better term. Plus, I have to assume also you probably have just this baked in sense of like security with your healthcare background. The idea of security and privacy is always top of mind no matter what you're doing in your projects, I would assume.
Yeah, I was a HIPAA privacy and security officer in a past life. So, and I've spent a lot of time in the compliance and privacy space, a lot of regulatory things. And so, yes, it's there. I usually, first people I make friends with when I go into an organization is that legal compliance risk management group, which is usually where a lot of people shy away from. But again, a lot of it is my role has been to translate, to make people feel at ease and understand what, different size business, tech, data, so they can all, kind of translate and be a liaison between them.
Without a doubt. Oh, I tell you what, I'm just so stoked for you. I'm very stoked for Techstra Solutions. I think you guys coming together, I mean, it's gonna help solve a lot of problems for companies that are doing big things out there. And you can have a lot of fun while doing it too.
I want to fun. I do. Yeah.
You want to keep you happy and having fun there, Mitch. Simple as that.
Having fun is important.
I agree with you 100%. Okay, so we're gonna move over to my big thing here. I've been alluding to this. It's my TechVibe signature questions right now. And so I've talked about, what was like the moment or project or insight that maybe first convinced you that technology could just transform your industry?
So I go back to implementing electronic health records. I came out of a tech education, tech certifications, and to me at the time, very early in that stage of my career, thought everything was about you're using a computer. How difficult could it be? I had the opportunity, as uncomfortable as it was sometimes, to be in exam rooms as I was helping physicians use the electronic records, to be in the exam room while they were with patients. And there was a time when one of our physicians was with a patient, and he was using a chronic disease management tool that I had built in the EHR. And he was asking some questions about how certain things worked and so on. And I walked through it and showed the patient was watching and was amazed at what that system could do. EHR implementations aren't painless. They were actually pretty tough to do, but this was an opportunity that patients actually saw firsthand on the computer screen. Oh, here are my lab results. Here's the risk score for my diabetes. Here's, those types of things. And it was at that point that I think I really connected that what we do on the technology side, it has to connect to patients in healthcare. And I always took that with me, and with all the teams I've worked with, it's always, what's best for the patients. And that was
a great story.
Very
that.
Transformative.
You're talking about human lives being impacted there.
Absolutely.
I'd be pretty stoked for myself right there too. Okay. So from your vantage point today, what is the single biggest change you see coming that most leaders maybe aren't ready for?
I think we have a big challenge coming with workforce, and it's something that I worry about. I have kids, and I think we have seasoned veterans out there from the tech industry. If you look at things like Goldman Sachs, IMF, others are predicting, there's 60+% of jobs are either going to be impacted by AI or replaced by AI. Everybody's rushing to try to cut jobs and cut time. But we don't really know what that means yet. And one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of the positions that are getting eliminated are entry level. We see things we're seeing some of the, things around contract analysis or fraud detection in finance industry. Coding and software development now can be done by these AI tools, debugging. In the arts, if you look at music, writing, it's hard for people coming out of school to say, okay, what am I going to do? What's the job I'm going to have? How should I be trained? Yeah. So I think for us, we have to figure out how do we reskill or upskill and redeploy our current staff, and how do we help those future workforce people really be prepared for whatever they're going to go into.
Final question. We got less than a minute left. I don't want to shortchange it, but this would be good. Maybe this will put some extra pressure on you. If you could leave our audience with just one practical action that they can take this week to move their organization closer to digital transformation, what would that be?
I always go back again to connecting what you're doing and the outcomes and value to the business problem. And I think even something as simple as taking a look at all of the projects, all of the initiatives that are out there, and really looking and seeing, do these connect up back to the business? What are we getting? Is this just something somebody asked for? Is it a pet project? Is it a nice to have? I think really being able to quantify and put a number somehow, ideally $1. And I know that's tough, but there's got to be something that gets connected there and make sure that, hey, these are the things, these are the right things to be working on. Again, I think that approach, that's where the data and AI space, the analytics space is going. A lot of leaders are being, challenged to say, hey, what's the value of this? No longer are we in a space where we say, we did this data quality initiative and it's soft and squishy ROI. You have to show what that means. So I think starting with what you're working on is a good place and figuring out how to grow from there.
Perfect. You passed the test. I love it. I'll tell Larry and Jen that Mitch passed the test. Mitch, thank you for hanging out with you. What a pleasure. So happy to talk with you today. I learned so much. I know our listeners did too. Hey, if you're listening out there, keep tuning in every single Sunday. We bring you the best and brightest from Pittsburgh's tech sector. If you need it on demand, go wherever you get your podcasts. Look for TechVibe. We literally have thousands of interviews with folks just like Mitch. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. And I'd be remiss to say, go to pghtech.org to find out the ways the Pittsburgh Tech Council can help your tech company succeed. Have a great rest of your Sunday and hope to see you next week.
Thanks for geeking out with us on TechVibe Radio. Tune in next Sunday for more tech and innovation stories right here from Pittsburgh. TechVibe is brought to you by Compunetics at Compunetics.com, Chorus Call at ChorusCall.com, Highmark at Highmark.com, Huntington Bank at Huntington.com, Kindling at TheKindlingAgency.com, PNC Bank at PNC.com, and Savior at Savior.com. And we're always coming at you from the Huntington Bank Studios.